how Andrew's daughters Beatrice and Eugenie now have one option: to voluntarily renounce their royal titles.
There are reports that Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie have been banned from attending Royal Ascot in June, and they won't be allowed to join their family in the royal procession either. This is all due to the Epstein revelations surrounding their parents.
On the morning of March 14th, 2026, King Charles III authorised a series of quiet but decisive actions that those close to the palace are describing as the beginning of the end of Beatrice and Eugenie's formal royal existence. Not an announcement, not a press conference. A series of institutional decisions communicated through the appropriate channels that set in motion a process the sisters had been dreading for months, and that those close to them say has left both women in a state of genuine devastation. Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, the daughters of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, formerly Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson, have been named hundreds of times in the Epstein files released by the United States Department of Justice in early 2026. One document in particular has attracted enormous attention. It shows that on July 27, 2009, just weeks after Andrew's release from prison following his sex trafficking conviction, Sarah Ferguson brought both her daughters, Beatrice was 20 years old, Eugenie was 19, to lunch with Jeffrey Epstein in Palm Beach. They were not suspects. They have never been accused of any wrongdoing. But they were there, in the documents, in the files, in the record, and in a palace fighting for its reputation against the most damaging scandal of its modern history. Being in those files at all is something that King Charles has now formally decided he cannot manage around indefinitely. Royal experts are describing Charles's decision as decisive action to distance himself from the York sisters. An insider close to the palace told journalists this week that Beatrice and Eugenie are particularly vulnerable at the moment. Beatrice, one source reported, is bursting into tears regularly, not for her father, but for the implosion of her own world.
Beatrice and Eugenie jumping on a plane to spend time with Epstein, along with Fergie, has reputational consequences. The monarchy has to think long-term, and Ascot is about safeguarding the brand.
Today we are going to tell you exactly what Charles has decided, what it means for the sisters' titles and their homes inside the royal palaces, why the Epstein files made this outcome increasingly inevitable, and whether there is any realistic path back for two women who have spent their entire adult lives trying to build a life separate from their father's shadow, only to find that shadow following them into the files of a federal investigation thousands of miles away. We are going to take our time, because this story deserves it, so settle in, and let's begin. To understand the full weight of what is happening to Beatrice and Eugenie right now, you need to understand what their position inside the royal family has actually looked like for the past several years. Because their situation is one of the most genuinely unusual in the modern history of the British monarchy. Both sisters carry the title of Princess and the HRH designation, Her Royal Highness, which signals full royal recognition. That title was not stripped from them when their father's titles were removed by Charles in October 2025. The palace at that point insisted that their positions were wholly unaffected by what had happened to Andrew. But both sisters are non-working royals. They do not carry out official engagements on behalf of the crown. They do not represent the monarch at state occasions. They do not receive public funding for royal duties because they do not perform royal duties in the formal sense. What they do have, what they have relied on throughout their adult lives, is the social, commercial, and practical infrastructure that the title provides. The title opens doors in business and in the world of international philanthropy. It secures invitations. It creates connections. It positions them in a world of wealthy and influential people in a way that their own careers, Eugenie works in the London art world, Beatrice has built a career in technology consultancy, would not independently produce. Royal author Andrew Loney has been direct about this. Their economic prospects depend on remaining within the royal family, he has said. Their jobs in client relations are based on being princesses. And there is the housing. This is the dimension that has attracted less public attention than the title question, but that is, in practical terms, equally significant to both sisters' daily lives. Beatrice holds an apartment inside St. James's Palace, one of the most historic royal properties in London, sitting in the heart of Westminster. The arrangement was made by their father when Andrew still had the standing to negotiate such things. A source familiar with the arrangement told The Times that the rental deal was made with their father as he wanted them to have a foothold in the royal palaces. The amount Beatrice reportedly pays is approximately £20,000 per year. Royal expert Richard Palmer has noted that the market value of a comparable London apartment in that area would be approximately 10 times that figure. A £200,000 apartment renting for £20,000. Eugenie occupies Ivy Cottage within the Kensington Palace estate, a 3-bedroom residence that she shares with her husband Jack Brooksbank and their 2 young sons. The arrangement is similar in its structure to Beatrice's, a grace and favour basis, a subsidised rate that reflects their royal connection rather than the open London property market. Both arrangements were made when their father was still in a position to negotiate on their behalf. He is not in that position anymore. If you are watching this for the first time and you want to follow this story as it develops, and it is developing quickly, please subscribe right now. We cover the royal family in the depth and detail these stories deserve. Hit subscribe, turn on your notifications, and every new video comes straight to you. Now let's talk about what the Epstein files actually revealed about Beatrice and Eugenie. Because precision is essential here, and the difference between what the documents show and what they do not show matters enormously. The US Department of Justice released a substantial tranche of Epstein-related documents in early 2026. Within those documents, Beatrice and Eugenie are named hundreds of times. The sisters' names appear throughout years of Epstein's communications and records, primarily in the context of their mother Sarah Ferguson's relationship with Epstein. The document that has attracted the most specific attention is an email exchange from July 2009. Epstein sends a message to what appears to be Ferguson's email address, asking simply where she is. Ferguson replies that she is in Miami and is aiming to get to him for lunch. The lunch that took place on July 27, 2009, according to records in the files, was attended by Sarah Ferguson and both her daughters. The timing of that lunch is what makes it so significant. Epstein had been released from prison just weeks earlier. He had served 13 months of an 18-month sentence after being convicted of soliciting prostitution from a minor. He was a known, convicted sex offender when Sarah Ferguson brought her daughters, 20-year-old Beatrice and 19-year-old Eugenie, to have lunch with him. Neither Beatrice nor Eugenie has been accused of any wrongdoing in connection with Epstein. Being at a lunch is not a crime. Being 19 or 20 years old and accompanying your mother to meet someone she introduces you to is not evidence of anything except that you had a mother who made a serious mistake of judgment that day. But it is in the files, it is documented, and in the court of public opinion, and in the institutional calculations of a palace managing its reputation, being in those files at all creates an association that the palace cannot simply absorb indefinitely. The institutional consequences of that association have already begun to arrive. Eugenie resigned as patron of Anti-Slavery International after 7 years, following the announcement that the Charity Commission was investigating the Anti-Slavery Collective, a separate organisation she had co-founded in 2017. The resignation came directly in the wake of the Epstein file revelations. The charity severed its ties with her and scrubbed her name from its website. That moment, an anti-slavery organisation removing an anti-slavery campaigner from its records because of her proximity to a sex trafficker, captures the particular cruelty of the sisters' position. They did not commit what Epstein committed, but the association has made them toxic to the very causes they have genuinely tried to serve. Let's now talk about Charles's specific decisions and what the palace has set in motion. Charles has, according to palace sources speaking to trusted journalists this week, authorised a formal review of the sisters' institutional positions. That review encompasses their titles, their housing arrangements, and their participation in official royal events. The Ascot exclusion. The formal decision to bar both sisters from the royal enclosure at Royal Ascot in June 2026 is the first public application of that review. Royal expert Richard Palmer, speaking to media in the past week, described it as merely the beginning of a series of potential snubs. In my view, in the future, they will end up losing their royal titles, Palmer said unequivocally. The housing question is moving simultaneously. The rental arrangements at St James's Palace and Ivy Cottage were negotiated when Andrew had institutional standing to make such arrangements. Andrew no longer has that standing. He has been stripped of his titles, removed from Royal Lodge, and is currently staying in a property on the Sandringham estate in Norfolk, a temporary arrangement that itself represents a significant reduction from his previous position. With Andrew's institutional standing gone, the basis on which the sisters' housing arrangements were negotiated is weakened significantly. The arrangements are not automatically terminated, but they are subject to review in a way that they were not when Andrew was in a position to defend them. Royal expert Palmer put the housing situation plainly. The market rents are not equivalent to similar properties in those areas, he told journalists. He predicted growing public intolerance for such arrangements and described a future reckoning where the princesses may have to relinquish these homes. Let's pause here. We are at the midpoint of this story, and the section that follows covers what the sisters want to do, what their advisors are telling them, and what Charles's slimmed-down monarchy strategy means for where this ends. If you know someone who is following this story and who would want to have it explained properly and in full, please share this video with them now. Thank you. Let's talk about what Beatrice and Eugenie themselves want, because their own position, what they have said through sources and what their behaviour has indicated, tells an important part of this story. Both sisters want to keep their titles. That much is clear. They want to hold on to their royal status. It is their identity, a family friend told People magazine this week. The word identity is important here, not just their income, not just their career advantage, their identity, who they understand themselves to be, the thread that connects them to a grandmother they love deeply and a family they grew up inside, and a sense of belonging that the title represents and that losing the title would permanently alter. They have not spoken publicly about their father's situation, their mother's revelations in the Epstein files, or their own appearance in the documents. They have kept a low profile. Eugenie was photographed at a contemporary art fair in Doha, maintaining a professional presence without engaging with the media scrutiny surrounding her family. Beatrice has similarly maintained her engagements at the Outward Bound Trust in her role as deputy patron, carrying out the kind of quiet charitable work that has characterised both sisters' approach to public life. Those who know them describe two women who have spent years trying, with considerable discipline and considerable dignity, to disentangle themselves from their parents' world, who chose husbands without royal connections. Edoardo Mapelli Mozzi is an Italian-British property developer. Jack Brooksbank works in hospitality, and who have built careers in the private sector rather than in the more glamorous but more exposed world of commercial celebrity. They have also made a choice about their children that speaks volumes about their thinking. Neither Beatrice's daughter Sienna nor Eugenie's sons August and Ernest have been given royal titles. They are private individuals. That choice was deliberate. It signals an understanding on both sisters' parts that the next generation deserves to step further away from the formal royal structure rather than deeper into it. but they have not, themselves, been willing to make that step for their own generation. And the palace is now, according to sources, moving toward a position where the step may be made for them. Let's understand why Charles is acting now, because he spent years insisting that the sisters were wholly unaffected by their father's situation. His public position, maintained through Andrew's BBC interview disaster, through the removal of Andrew's military titles, through the stripping of Andrew's formal styles and honours in October 2025, was that Beatrice and Eugenie were separate, that they had done nothing wrong, that they should not be punished for their father's choices. The Epstein files changed that calculation, not because they revealed wrongdoing by the sisters, they did not, but because they revealed something that the palace's previous position, wholly unaffected, could not survive. The documents showed that Sarah Ferguson had brought her daughters into Epstein's orbit, not once, multiple times. The July 2009 lunch is the most specific and most documented instance, but the files contain numerous references to the York family across years of Epstein's correspondence. The picture that emerges is not one of two daughters who were entirely separate from their parents' association with Epstein. It is one of a family whose connections to Epstein were woven through multiple generations. The palace's wholly unaffected position had always depended on the sisters being entirely separate from the story. The files demonstrated that the separation was not as complete as the palace had publicly maintained. And once that became clear, once the files demonstrated that the wholly unaffected position was not sustainable, Charles was left with a choice between two forms of institutional damage: the damage of being seen to abandon two women who had done nothing wrong, or the damage of allowing two women whose names were throughout the Epstein files to continue attending official royal events and occupying subsidized royal residences. He chose the first form. The institutional survival logic that Princess Anne has been articulating throughout this period, that the monarchy cannot carry members whose associations with the Epstein investigation remain unverified or complicated, has prevailed. Not with cruelty, but with a consistency that is hard to attribute to anything other than a very clear sense of what the institution requires to survive. Let's talk about what a future without the titles actually looks like for both sisters. Because it is not necessarily a catastrophe of the kind that the word devastated might imply. Royal expert Richard Palmer, in his assessment of the situation, offered a perspective that those close to the sisters would probably find more comforting than the headline damage suggests. Beatrice and Eugenie are testament to the fact that not everything Andrew and Fergie touched turned to rot, he said. They did create two fairly well-adjusted, bright young women who have had successful careers. Their private careers, Eugenie in art, Beatrice in technology, are real. Their marriages are stable. Their children are healthy. Their personal relationships with the wider royal family, including their Uncle Charles and their cousins William and Zara, are described as likely to endure in private, even as the formal institutional connection is reduced. Former BBC royal correspondent Jenny Bond noted that both sisters have never really flaunted their titles and that there has always been a degree to which the title was more burden than platform in their personal lives. Giving up their titles would give them freedom from their parents, stop them from being painted with the same brush, and be a clear sign that they want to make their own way in the world. Royal author Ingrid Seward said in an analysis published this week, that analysis is genuine. There is a version of the sisters' future in which the formal separation from the royal structure produces, eventually, a kind of freedom. A life in which their identity is built around who they are and what they have built, rather than around a connection to a family whose most public chapter has been defined by their father's choices. But that version of the future requires accepting the loss of something that is genuinely their identity, not just their career advantage, not just their housing, their sense of belonging to the family they were born into and the grandmother they loved. That is not a small thing to accept, and the tears that those close to Beatrice describe are not simply tears about practical consequences. They are tears about the loss of a version of herself that she has held on to through everything her father did, through every revelation, through every media storm. The title said, "I am a princess of the Windsor family. I belong here. Whatever my father did, I belong here." And the institution is now quietly, and with the particular coldness of institutional necessity, beginning to say, "Not anymore. Let's end where this story is most human." Beatrice and Eugenie did not choose their parents. They did not choose Jeffrey Epstein's world. They were 19 and 20 years old when their mother brought them to lunch with a man who had just served prison time for sexual exploitation. They did not know then what the world would eventually come to understand fully about that man. They were young women doing what young women do when their mother introduces them to someone. They have spent the 16 years since trying to build something separate from that world. Separate careers, separate homes, separate identities. Children who will carry no royal title, who will grow up as private individuals, who will not be defined by what their grandfather did. And now, in March 2026, the institution that was supposed to be their family is telling them that the separation they built was not complete enough, that the files contain their names too many times, that the institutional risk of their continued formal presence is too high to sustain. That is a particular kind of loss, not the loss of a title, the loss of belonging, the loss of the certainty that however bad things got, you were still inside the family, still a Windsor, still part of something that had been yours since the day you were born. They will carry that loss, in the quiet, dignified way that both sisters have always managed the things that came to them without their choosing. And when the formal announcement eventually comes, as it will come, those close to the palace are now saying, they will accept it because they will have no other choice. But the acceptance will not be painless, and the institution that makes that decision should know what it is asking of two women who, by every credible account, did not deserve what the story of their family became. They deserved better, and in whatever life they build after the titles are gone, we hope they find it. Thank you so much for staying with us today through this entire story. These are complicated human situations, and we are grateful to everyone who watched all the way to the end. If this story moved you, and the situation of Beatrice and Eugenie is one that asks us to hold sympathy alongside institutional logic in a genuinely difficult way, please leave a comment below. Tell us whether you believe Charles is right to act, or whether you think the sisters are being asked to pay a price for something that was not their fault. We read every comment, and your perspective genuinely matters to us. And if you are not yet subscribed, please do it now. Click subscribe, turn on your notifications, and we will see you in the next one. Thank you. We will see you soon.